Okay, guide to finding credible sources. So you have those videos that I showed you previously in that research resources module that's going to give you a lot of in-depth use of this. So I'm not going to go in depth about how to do this. That's what those videos are for. But I do want to talk to you about what makes them good and what are some of the maybe the problems that we have with it. So Google Books, this is books.google.com. This gives you previews of books and often includes relevant sections for your research. Sometimes you'll have the entire book, but sometimes you'll only have the table of contents. So that's one of its weaknesses, that you might have a really great book, but they only give you the table of contents. So, but it's worth looking at if you need, especially stuff that's more findable in a book length kind of source. You can search by keyword, title, or author. You can use preview to access relevant sections. You can check for author credentials and publication date. And it also can help lead you to other sources. Now, EBSCO also has books in it. They have databases that include books, so that's not the only place you can find books, but it's really great. So Google Scholar, this is scholar.google.com. This is indices of scholarly literature, right? It offers citation information as well, so you get that and then you see who they cited from. It can be difficult to navigate, and not all results are free, right? It might take you to an article online, but you can only get it if you pay for it. So in my video, I show you how you might be able to get around that, or how you might find it in another place. So again, watch that video if you need help that way. But again, it'll also allows you to search by different ways. It allows you to find reputable journals in the field. It uses the cited by feature to find related articles. So, but that means is you can see here's the article that you're looking at, and then it'll list all of the other articles that cited that article in their research. So you might be able to find relevant research or related papers that way. It also allows you to check for author affiliations and publication dates. So EBSCO, this is our research database that is a subscription database. It has scholarly journals, magazines, and newspapers. It is huge, and it does require access through the college. Go to announcements tool. Well, I'm not sure, yours might not say that, but you can find here where it says EBSCO login credentials, EBSCO password. We've got two right now. Either of these will work. So if you're not using the Wi-Fi or a computer on the college campus, you have to log in. So if you're off campus, you've got to use those credentials. Again, you have to use our version. If you have access to EBSCO through your high school or another college, you can't use that because EBSCO is a subscription service and there are different levels. So you may be using something that Seminole State College doesn't have access to, then I can't verify the source. So use ours only. Again, I've given you a detailed walkthrough of how to use this, so I would say watch that to show how to do a really good advanced search. Google Chrome or any search engine, strengths, they're easy to use. They cover a lot of different information. However, the results are not always reliable or scholarly. You have to really evaluate the sources. So if you go to something like Google Scholar or EBSCO, right, and you're only looking for research journals that are peer reviewed, then that kind of helps with your evaluation. You know then that the authority and the purpose are probably fine, right? You still have to consider other elements of the trap test, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit, but you don't have to worry usually about whether it's a credible source. But if you're just using the search engine, you've got to do all of that work because you don't know where it comes from necessarily, unless it's an obvious credible site. So here again, you can use specific terms. You have to evaluate them with the trap test. You want to look for edu, gov, or org because they're more reliable than .com, but even org can be iffy. Gov and edu, they don't give those out to just anybody, so that's a higher threshold of credibility. Again, you must be skeptical of blogs, personal websites, and sites with excessive advertising, and in fact, those things will not be considered credible research because they won't pass the trap test. So again, whatever you use, it must pass the trap test. So we've already talked about this before. So like I said, when you're looking at something that's from a peer-reviewed journal, then probably these last three, authority and purpose are good. What you have to worry about is relevance and timeliness, right? Because it might be a perfectly fine article, but it was published 15 years ago, so it might not no longer be relevant. And if it's no longer timely, then probably it's not accurate. That, there's different information out that has supplanted that information. It also might not be very relevant. Just because it's scholarly does not mean it's really about what you're talking about. So you still have to make sure you've got timeliness and relevance. And then timeliness, if it's not timely, then it might not be accurate. So again, authority and purpose are usually fine with the scholarly journal. It's the other three that you've got to look at. So additional tips, don't rely on a sole source, right? Now, again, you have to have 5 sources here. But again, if you don't have, look for multiple sources. Always look for the better source as long as you have time, right? You got to keep on that deadline. You need to have all of your sources by a certain day. But, gather as much as possible. You should probably reading 3 or 4 times more than what you actually end up citing in a paper. Look for citations. Credible sources will cite their own sources, allowing you to verify their information. So this is a real big problem with websites, because sometimes they'll give you information, but they won't tell you where their information came from. Scholarly journal, a reputable magazine or newspaper will give you that information. Again, ask librarians if you have access to one. So I finished this guide by giving you an example of 2 different articles about the same issue, whether zoos are good for animals. And I walk you through the trap test for each. I'm not going to go over this in the video. I'm just pointing it out to you here to show you how you can use the trap test to actually figure out whether something is credible or not. So the first article, example 1, is not a credible article. And yet when I do this in Comp 2 and I have students read it before I give them the information, I have quite a few students who like what he says, and so they think it's credible. But when we go over it in class, they're like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah, right? So again, this shows you how you can use that trap test to actually figure out whether it's good to use or not, right? And then Article 2 here is a different one from Forbes. Both of these, Forbes and The Guardian, are both reputable publications. So again, it's like, okay, they're reputable, but just because somebody is being published on these sites does not mean they're good for academic argument, or they might not even be very timely or authoritative, right? So again, you can see that when you look at the handout. Okay, well, I hope that helps get you a start for what you're going to be doing here in the paper. This is a very short paper, so again, do your best. Right? And if you have a question, if you're not sure if a particular source meets standards, shoot me a link to it, and I'll give you a real quick thumbs up or thumbs down. I won't necessarily tell you why, but I'll say, no, I think that's fine. And then you can figure it out in terms of analyzing for your works cited page. But I'll at least let you know if it's a good one to consider. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.